Today I'm going to show you how a tax sale works in New Jersey. New Jersey represents amazing opportunities to get high rates of interest and maybe even to get yourself a piece of property at a bargain price. So let's talk about the way the process works. They start by selling a tax lien in New Jersey. Now, a tax lien is not ownership of the property. A tax lien is the right to collect the taxes when and if they're paid by the owner, plus interest. And interest rates in New Jersey, the stated rate of interest is 18%. That's right, 1-8. That's a lot of interest, right? Well, like a lot of things, it may not be as it first appears. Here's the way it works. In New Jersey, they advertise that they're holding a tax lien sale, usually about a month in advance of the auction. It's at least a month, but it's a month to maybe a month and 2 weeks. They advertise they're holding a tax lien auction, and then you can go down to this auction, which can be held in the courthouse or online. Auctions are across the country moving more on and more online, but either way, you go to a public auction, and what's interesting is that you bid to pay the taxes, but you also bid on the interest rate. So let's say there were $10,000 worth of taxes that were due. You're going to offer, it starts at 18%. Maybe you're bidding against someone else and they say, well, I'll take 17%. You say, well, I'll take 16%. I'll take 15%. And that bid down process stops when no one else is offering a lower rate of interest. So that, you'll come, maybe you get a 10% rate of interest. That's great. Well, you have to wait 2 years before you can take the next step, which would be foreclosing on the property to actually have the deed transfer. So what happens during that 2-year period is more taxes are going to come up, right? Probably 2 years worth of taxes. Well, those are what are called subsequents. The fun thing about the subsequents is you can potentially purchase the subsequent taxes. You get first right on that. So you can purchase the subsequent taxes and get 18% on it. So you could have your second and those 2 follow-on years where you're collecting 18% interest, because as the holder of the tax lien, you have the right to do that. So that's kind of a no bid process, and that's really good. You can really juice up your returns. If the person does not pay you within 2 years, then you can start foreclosure proceedings on the taxes that are at least 2 years old. And there you go to Superior Court, you can apply to foreclose. Usually 6 months or so you can get the foreclosure done, and that's going to get you paid off, or it's going to get you the property, one or the other. And when we talk about the properties, you have to think about what kind of work do I have to do around the property. Very, very important that you need to buy liens only against properties that are valuable, because you don't want to buy against, a valueless piece of property if it's something that is not desirable because it's in the wrong section of town, or it's in such bad condition that no one would want it. You don't want that, because the owner is not going to redeem that, so you're not going to get your interest, and maybe you won't even get your money back on the property. So anytime you're looking at tax sale liens or properties to buy at an auction, make sure you're always looking at the condition of the property. You want to make sure that your essentially loan you're making against the property is against a good piece of property. So make sure that for every property you're considering buying a tax lien, you look at the property, determine, is it occupied or is it vacant? Is it run down or is it in nice shape? Is it in a good neighborhood or a neighborhood you don't want to be in? Is it raw land or does it have a house on it? Because also understand, they'll sell every piece of assessed property. Just because they're selling it doesn't mean that it's buildable. It doesn't mean that it has something on it. It could be a little narrow strip of land that's just from a surveyor's mistake. So you have to be very responsible for yourself and make sure that you thoroughly check out each property that's going to be offered at the auction, because you don't want to buy a lien against a property with no value, because that's not going to be paid off. And most people that are in the lien business are in the business for high yield interest. You're looking to buy something where you can get 18% interest. And in New Jersey, like I said, that's going to work on the subsequents, not on the first year. But you want to be in for that. And you're not looking to get stuck with a property. It's a financial instrument mostly. For places where you're looking to get the property, the easiest thing to do is go to places where there are tax deed auctions. Just simply go buy the property at a tax deed auction. In New Jersey, you could do that in New York, or you could do it in Pennsylvania. You could do it in Delaware, 3 kind of neighboring states you could do it in. And what you don't want to do is use a tax lien strategy as your way to acquire properties. It can work, but it's not the greatest. And it's also, in my view, going out. There was a case a couple years back called Tyler versus Hennepin County, where the U.S. Supreme Court said that when there's extra money left over from a tax sale, it has to be available for the former owner to claim. This is causing not only changes in the overages business, which I'll tell you about that in a minute, but that's a business that I spend most of my time on, but it's also changing the rules that states are using in the way that they foreclose. In the past, there were many states where you would buy the tax lien, and if nobody paid off the tax lien, they would just give you the property, and you could get properties for maybe a year's worth of taxes. It's still working that way in Illinois right now, but that is going out because I believe under the Tyler case, what is going to happen is that these states are going to all go to tax deed auctions. And tax deed auction is where they sell the property at a public auction, highest bidder wins, and that tends to create large overages. And what that means, overage is just the difference between the taxes owed on the property versus what the property sells for. And even in New Jersey where the property taxes are high, they're not that high. A year's worth of taxes is probably 3% of the property value at the most. It's not a whole lot of money. So if you had, we'll just use this number because it's easy. If you had a $100,000 property and they owed $3,000 in taxes for the year, if that sells at a tax foreclosure auction, it's probably selling for somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000. So let's take the low side. It sells for $60,000. Well, if you owed $3,000 and it sold for $60,000, that means there's $57,000 left over. That money is called overages money. Sometimes you hear it called excess funds. Sometimes called overbids. That money is claimable by the former owner. And the problem is that the former owners generally have no idea there's any money they could claim, any money available to claim. They don't know the first thing about it. So what happens is the money just sits there with the government, and depending on the state it varies, but after a certain amount of time, that money is going to get forfeited to the state. And once it's forfeited, it can't be gotten. But the owners have no idea there's any money that exists. They think, well, they sold my house, so I guess they keep the money. That's not correct. What's correct is that there's a process to apply for those excess funds and get them. And since former owners don't know about it, they typically don't claim the money. There's one state study that they do every year. And what they found is that every year, less than 70% of the people claim their money. So it's like 29% of the people claim their money. The others don't. So the money just sits there and it forfeits to the state in the millions of dollars per year. So what we do in this business, and this, like I said, is my main business, I get the lists of monies being held. I get the contact information for the people that are eligible to claim the money. I reach out to them and say, hey, there's $50,000 we could get for you for a percentage. We're happy to do the work. It doesn't cost you anything. If it's not successful, would you like to work with us? And we do really well getting money for people. It's basically free money to them. It's a big windfall. And if you're someone that lost your house at tax sale, boy, could you use a big windfall. Believe me, those people could really use a big windfall. And it's a fun business. And it's simpler than going and competing with other bidders, bidding down interest rates. The interest rates can go to, believe it or not, they can go to zero. And then people sometimes even pay extra on the assumption that they're going to be able to make up the money later when they do the subsequents, meaning they buy the second year's taxes and third year's taxes. They're thinking they're going to do well from that. So, I don't like to compete. I would rather just, win without competing. Overages business like that. I don't have to compete with anybody. Matter of fact, I'm glad when people buy properties at tax sales and overpay, I'm thrilled because it just makes huge amounts of overages money in there. So it's really cool. Another thing about New Jersey, it tends to work township by township rather than county by county. So there are lots of sales, there's lots of opportunity, there's lots of overages. It's a good place to do business, but if you're going to do either the tax liens, make sure you educate yourself, hook up with a local attorney who knows the business, and sit down and find out what the risks are, what the procedures are. Generally speaking, your risks are condition risks because they have been allowed to run down. Making sure you get a good property risk because these are ignored properties. So you want to make sure you're getting good ones, and just working through the mechanics. Like when you have to do a foreclosure, that has to be done precisely and exactly, and you need an attorney to do that for you. So make sure that if you're going to do the tax liens, that you sit down with an attorney who's knowledgeable in tax liens and learn that business. Overages are simpler. You don't really need that same level of scrutiny. There aren't all the minefields. Because the other thing with overages is we're not putting up money. We're just providing a service for people, so we're not putting that money out up front. If you want to know more about overages, easiest thing to do with that is just check out my intro to overages video. I did a probably 15 or 20 minute video where I give you all the rundown on the overages business, how it works, who it's right for, and how you can get involved with it. So if you look, there'll be a link up there to the overages business, or there's also one down below. Sometimes browsers don't support that link, so look on that link. Click there, and I'll see you over at the Intro to Overages video. I'm thrilled to share this business with you. It's a profitable business. It's easy to start. I think it's easy to do. You're just really doing some internet research and calling people, but I'll tell you more about that on the Intro to Overages video. So click on that link, and I'll see you over there.